No. I accidentally deleted our theme music right before I pressed the button, and so we got the More You Know music. Hi, everybody. This is a podcast that is just falling to new levels of poor intros. My name is AJ with Audacity Micro. I am here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity.
How we doing, AJ?
Hi. I thought we were already kind of bad at doing podcasts, but I think we just reached new. Oh gosh. Anyway, how was your week?
It's been good. Been busy. I finally feel like I got my head above water for a little bit. Still got a lot of stuff going on, but I finally feel like I'm ahead of the curve a little bit.
Nice.
Hopefully I can stay there. So, no longer drowning. But
I am.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So we got, well, not literally, but like with water. We got a huge amount of rain over the last couple of days. I think the ground was already saturated, and then we had a huge storm like last night, and it's still going. And no matter how I try to get to my shop, there is at least one puddle that you have to walk through that is like deeper than my shoes are tall. And so every time I come out to the shop, my socks get wet.
Maybe you should just carry a set of clean socks and just like commit to getting soaked between the two.
I have a pair of boots, what I would call wellies, but this is me growing up in South Africa. A pair of waders, or is that what you would call them?
Yeah. If you're really old school,
boots, rain boots.
If you're really old school, like some of my older relatives, you call them rubbers, and then
rubbers?
And then
something else in my book, but okay.
Yeah, and then you look at the room as everyone turns and goes, "What? What?"
Yeah, yeah, they're wellies. So I don't know. My shop always gets a very small amount of water in it when it rains underneath the garage door. And there's pretty much just that. The only weird thing is there is a hole in my floor by where my air compressor is. And I remember the previous owner making some comment about, like, I don't know if there used to be a toilet there or if it was a place you could put a toilet or he was planning on putting a toilet there. I don't know. But there's a hole in the ground that looks like it may have a piece of PVC in it or something. But for the first time ever, I saw water come up that today. So I don't know where that goes. But apparently it goes somewhere.
Did it flood your shop?
Yeah, it was just a small little trickle.
But did it come out of it and like onto the floor, or was it like...
Yes, there was a very small puddle on the floor of my shop.
Okay. Fair enough. What about work-wise? Are you still flooded work-wise, or are you above water there?
I still have a ton of things I need to do. I am not hitting deadlines right now.
Uh-oh.
No, in a good way. I'm not pressed by deadlines.
Oh, okay.
I have been hitting deadlines, but I am not being threatened by deadlines at the moment. So yesterday I had to drive to the airport again because I screwed up a part for a dumb reason, which is a whole nother conversation. That was supposed to be a really easy part until I screwed it up at the last minute. So now I have like one Xometry job that's due, I don't know, next week sometime. It should be relatively straightforward. Then I have a non-Xometry job, and I've been working on revamping the carabiners. Finally, this is revision F of my production process for the carabiners. But I think this one will be my last one for a while. I probably said that on every other revision, but I've learned a lot since the last time I did one, because I really, really, really need to make Scott a lot of carabiners.
So are you going to schedule time for that, or because if you don't schedule time, I'm afraid they're just going to keep getting put on the back burner.
Yeah, that would seem to be the trend. Yeah, so right now, this is one of the reasons why I haven't been taking Xometry jobs is because like I've been needing to do this. My plan is to just not take any Xometry jobs until the carabiners are flowing.
Gotcha.
So I did take one, even though I told myself I wasn't, because it was like a $200 job, and I told Xometry that I would do it for $1,600, and they offered $1,200, and so I took it.
Oh,
But other than that, I'm not taking any.
I've never had Xometry, at least to my knowledge, where I put in an offer that's high and then they come back with an offer in the middle.
It happens to me a lot because I offer crazy amounts of money sometimes.
Interesting.
They'll be like, this is a $300 part, and I'll offer like $3,000, and they'll be like, how about $1,500?
Gotcha.
So
maybe I just need to start bidding much higher.
So, okay, here's a story for you. So I have a friend on Discord who, yeah, I can say his name, Nick. Well, I've already said it. Anyway, Nick from Discord. He has a shop. He does a lot of Xometry work. And I'm not going to go into details in case I get him in trouble. I don't think I will. So I was like asking for some help on these titanium disc parts that I was doing the other day. And like I just kind of described it. And he was like, hey, that sounds a lot like this part I did. And he showed me a picture of the part. And it was like the exact same part that I was making. And he had just like taken a different Xometry job for earlier. So he made one of them for $3,000.
Really?
I made 5 of them for $1,500. It was like, oh, I could have asked for more money.
Oh my.
Now, to be clear, it was a really good job for $1,500. I broke 2 1/32 inch end mills, but other than that, I spent nothing. I already had the materials. I already had the tooling. It took me 2 days or so. So, like, I made decent money, but it would have been really nice if I had made a couple, if I made 5 times more or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it will come down, but maybe not that far.
Yeah. So. It wasn't that hard of a part. I think he is like top tier of Xometry. So I'm sure he can ask for more money and get more money than I can.
Gotcha.
But it was like, oh, yeah. It was just kind of an eye-opener. So since then, I've been asking for way more money.
Fair enough. I might have to start doing that. We actually haven't been taking much Xometry work here recently. We've been pretty booked up with other work.
Yep.
I got a large order of parts I'm running right now. This one job is going to keep our new mill busy for over a week, 6 days.
Wow.
So I'm running 200 Delrin parts on the 5-axis. And they're not a very big part, but they are a very thin, delicate part.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's a little frustrating is my simulation time says like 7 minutes, and I've already got it slowed way down on my simulation where I have it set to like a 4-second tool change and a 85% speed ratio, whatever. And that normally works on other things. But this one, I don't know if it's just because of all the repositioning or whatnot, but it's like 15 minutes instead of 7. So it's like twice as long.
Yeah.
So, but regardless of that, it's a pretty complex part. And I was talking to a local machine shop, and I showed them that part I was working on, and they just flat out said, they're like, yeah, we wouldn't touch that part with a 10-foot pole. And so it was just kind of cool, like comparing notes on how we're doing it. And this is making me really want another mill other than the Tormach, and a robot, because this is going to be running for 6 days, and I could cut that down to probably 2 days or maybe 3 days with the robot if it was running at night.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping I can get more of this type of work. It's kind of sucky work for right now, but it's the perfect type of work to justify getting a robot. So it's like, I want more until I can get justification to get a robot. And then it'd be awesome. And then I'd need a second machine while that robot runs. So Anyways, we'll see.
So machine payments for the new machine have not been an issue, is what I'm gathering here.
Yeah, no, we've been doing all right. We're not doing as well as I would like to be, but that's mainly because we haven't been running the Tormach as much. It's like, we've run parts on the Tormach in the past, and then we got this machine. It's like, do we want to run these on the Tormach? No, let's just run them on the Haas. And so the Tormach just kind of sits right now, and so it's kind of spoiled us. And we've actually, speaking of the Tormach, we've recently put it up for sale.
I saw that.
So
I shared that.
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening to the podcast, we're selling our Tormach. Feel free to reach out if you got any questions, but I will say that it's got a brand new spindle in it that we've literally probably has less than 10 hours on it, or maybe even less than 5. But anyways, I'm excited to hopefully get that sold off and replace it with another Haas or similar. It doesn't have to be a Haas. It could be a Doosan. We actually had Mazak come into the shop the other day, and I don't know how they found out about us, but they just showed up and they want to put a Mazak in our shop. Of course, everyone that shows up as a salesman wants to put their machine in your shop. So that's to be expected. But
why not like a Speedio?
I would be interested in that. Weston is not. Weston has kind of turned tail. We're going back and forth on this. He wants to get a VF2 size machine with a 4th axis, and then he wants to get a dedicated 5 axis instead of a robo drill.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad plan.
So originally our plan was a VF3 style machine with the trunnion, which we have, and then a VF2 style machine, and then a DT machine with a 4th axis or a robo drill, that type of machine. That was our plan for our 3 machines, but Weston's opinion and mine kind of as well, but I don't think he's giving the brother Speedio robo drill a good enough shake. He's like, I don't want to get another 30 taper machine, and I think he's basing that off of the Tormach. And it's like they're a lot more capable. We just had problems with horsepower more than anything, it was either horsepower, rigidity, or the servo power, the servo motor power. Like we were always running against one of those limitations with that machine.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, we're also it was never the taper. The taper was never your issue.
Yes, exactly, and I don't think he quite understands that.
Have you showed him any videos of just like a Speedio just ripping through aluminum?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like to me, it allows you to get a smaller machine that you can get more tools out of. And if you're not hogging with like anything bigger than a 3/8 end mill, they're fine. They're more than rigid enough for that.
Oh, with a Speedio, you'd have no problem with a 1/2 inch.
Yeah. And like honestly, with our new mill, we're not really going over 1/2 inch most of the time, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be perfectly fine for that kind of work. So, anyways, we'll see. It might take some convincing for him. I'd really like to. I would be happy with a Speedio and a 5 axis, and then our current machine. But I think he wants to get everything with the same taper, so all of our tooling's interchangeable. Which I understand that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think I would probably go that way too. Go with like a DM.
Yeah,
because then you kind of get the best of all worlds.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm not sure. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're exploring options. We're perusing the used machine market, and we'll see. Once the Tormach sells, or we get someone who's interested, then we'll probably be more seriously looking at another machine. Yeah. So
that didn't take long. I said that didn't take long to go from your VF3 to wanting another machine.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where we're pretty much tapped out with our current capacity, but we want to get more jobs. And if I can get the VF2 or the VF3 that we got humming along, especially if I can get a robot in front of it, then I'm going to need another machine to run. And so we'll see. Yeah. It's a lot to take on, and this is honestly the scary part of the business, where it's like, how much debt do you want to take on? Because every machine you get, I mean, we're not flush with cash. We're not buying these machines with cash. So, what's, the risk versus the reward, how far do we want to push it, as long, and how much do we want to get paid down before we go to the next machine, and vice versa. The only reason we'd be looking at getting another machine is because if we sell the Tormach, we can roll that and make a down payment on it and get our payments close to what we're currently paying for the Tormach, because it's not completely paid off yet. So if I can take that payment away and replace it with a more capable machine that's, a couple $100 more or whatever, it's well worth that.
Have you considered with your VF3 going to a spindle gripper? Because like the gimbal automation or whatever it is, is it gimbal? I don't know. The gimbal automation system, I think they'll sell you a complete turnkey, like well outfitted automation system, and it's like $6 or $6,000.
I hadn't. I mean, I see their stuff all the time and I follow them all the time, but I haven't actually given them a serious shake. That's a good idea.
Yeah, because I mean, I think just the gripper itself is like $1,500 or something like that. Like, it's not expensive, at least compared to a robot.
Yeah.
You have a big table, and I bet you don't use the majority of it the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So just stick an air vise on the table.
I got the whole back row of the machine that's in no man's land, like in my Y-axis, that I could just line up parts on the back. And I could still have my 2 vices and my 5-axis. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. I think it's like $6,000. You get like an air vise and a flipper, and maybe it's like $10,000 if you get the flipper. I don't know. It's a very nice, well outfitted system is under $10,000 for them.
Interesting.
Then you basically just put a grid of parts down and 3D print yourself some gripper jaws or however they make them.
Yeah.
No robot.
I'll have to look into that. I'll have to
all milk code, no funny programming.
That's a good idea. I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll have to look into this.
Gimbal automation, you can send my commission check too.
Yeah. Oh man. So anyways, we got that going on. Kind of a lot to figure out there. And that's about it. Like we're just kind of busy keeping our nose to the grinding stone. Did anyone ask any questions on Patreon by chance?
No, not that I remember seeing. I do actually have an episode topic that I'd like to...
Yeah.
Do we have episode topics? Is that the thing? But there's a conversation I'd like to have. I am going to pull up our Patreon just in case I miss something. But before we get to that, can I describe the thing that I did that was dumb?
Yeah.
So, I was making a part. It had a NPT fitting on it, or an NPT thread on it. Nothing too weird. Male NPT thread. I had the ring gauge for it, and I only needed one of these parts. But I had screwed up in Op 1, so I was doing the threads in Op 2, and I was using that one I screwed up as my setup part. And so I put that one in there, my setup part in, and I dialed in the threads, and I adjusted my pitch diameter offset until the threads were perfect with the ring gauge. And when you tighten on the ring gauge, it only goes on one, or it's within plus or minus one thread at the top. I did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
I put on my part, I loaded up the actual part, I hit go, and I threaded on the ring gauge after it was done, and the ring gauge went all the way to the bottom of the part. It was way, way, way off.
Oh man.
I was like, what happened? This was exactly the same code. I think I tweaked speeds and feeds a little bit, but it was this should not have made that big of a difference. Turns out, with the ring gauge that I have, if you use it with the words facing up, it's upside down. And because it's a tapered thread, that really matters. So when I first dialed in the part, I had the writing up because, I don't know, that just made sense in my brain as an orientation. And then when I was like actually inspecting the real part, I, paid attention to what I was doing and I looked at the taper of the ring gauge and it was way off.
Yeah.
Uh,
I didn't piece it together, but about halfway through, I figured it out, and it was like, oh no, oh no.
and I was going to be on time. I had started later on that part than I wanted to because I was doing taxes with my accountant slash dad,
Mm-hmm.
and that phone call went a lot longer than I was expecting. The part only took like an hour from like set up to complete part,
Mm-hmm.
and except I did it twice. And then when I had to scrap that one, it was then too late to go to the local FedEx, and I had to drive
Mm-hmm.
to the FedEx at the airport. So I was
Yeah.
kicking myself for the whole hour and 10-minute drive as I drove to the airport because of using a stupid thread gauge upside down.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, most thread gauges that if as long as they weren't tapered, you would have been fine.
I know.
So your little story though did remind me of something else that happened this week that I completely forgot about though. So I, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast or not, but at one point there was a shop that closed down around us. Well, the sale of that building finally went through, and so the new owners have it, and they've been selling off everything that's at that place. And we
Hmm.
got one of the first walkthroughs, and we actually picked up a lot of random things. And so we now have a couple gauge block sets.
Oh, nice.
We got a dual station Kurt Vice. It's a 4-inch, but dual station. We got a profilometer,
Oh,
surface
yeah.
roughness
For
tester.
checking surface finish?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's super nice.
And we got what else we get? We got a Kennedy box, like a Kennedy toolbox,
Ooh,
which we looked those up and they're pretty expensive. This is an old one.
that's quite the status symbol for 60-year-old machinists.
Yeah. So we got one of those. And then we also got a bunch of other random stuff. I've got a sign vise. You can hold that, where you can hold that at different angles.
Oh, yeah.
You stick gauge blocks underneath them. I honestly don't have a use for that one yet, but
Yeah, you got a 5-axis.
yeah, but if we ever get a grinder or anything like that, I'm like, trust me, Weston. I was like, we might not need this. It might sit forever, but I said it's way too cheap to just let sit there and way too nice. So it looks like it's still new in the box. So pick that one up, and then a bunch of calipers and odds and ends. There was two items that we got that I've never actually seen as measuring tools. One of them was a durometer. It measures like the durometer of like plastic or something. Like if you stick it on it, which is kind of cool. And then the other one was a chamfer gauge that
Oh, okay.
you can measure how big your chamfer is. It's got like a 45-degree deal, and you like slide it over to a certain point, and it'll tell you the depth of your chamfer. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I've never seen one of those, but that's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
I have yet to try it out, but it looked pretty cool. And this was a kind of a dungeon shop, like very grimy, dark lights, dirty floors, nasty shop. But all of the equipment that they had been certified and had trace numbers, and that was last
Oh,
certified in
nice.
2018.
Okay.
So they were all like certified by a company, and I thought about sending some of the stuff back and seeing if I can get them recertified, or at least calling up the company. And because if we ever want to get ISO 9000 or anything like that, it'd be cool to like figure out where this company's at, because they're a local company, to get all of our stuff
Hmm.
certified. So they're like an hour away. So, anyways, it's kind of cool. And we got some other random bits and bobs that we just were able to find. They had some massive calipers though, or not calipers, micrometers. Like
Hmm.
to measure their largest set of micrometers that they had there could measure, I think, 3 or 4 foot.
Okay. Yeah.
Like they were huge. I told them that I said I don't need any of those, but if you have any at the end of this, Said, I want one because I want to hang it up in my shop because it's just like a massive micrometer. So I told him to hang on to one for me. So, anyways, yeah. So that was kind of fun. What else you got?
I just wanted to talk about the main event for this podcast, which is Profit First.
Ooh.
So earlier today, I officially got it set up today. I went to a new bank and I set up my Profit First checking account for Audacity Micro. I've had a separate account for, actually I've had two separate accounts for business stuff for a long time, but they had the problem where they could be seen with all of my personal accounts. Like they were, it's on the same different account, same login or whatever you want to call it. And that caused kind of a couple problems. One, occasionally things would get like accidentally transferred into or out of it that shouldn't have been there. Another kind of problem with it is like I would feel bad about building up money in that account when it's like, you know, my wife's like, okay, we really need to buy groceries. And I was like, well, it's not in our budget right now. And well, look at that account right there. It's like, well, I don't know. It's that separation was hard for people who aren't me. And
well, yeah, because you can't grow it takes cash to grow a business. And sometimes you have to build up cash so you can keep growing. Because it's always nice to have cash on hand. And sometimes that cash, it's like, yes, I have cash, but that's allocated even if I haven't paid it yet.
Yeah. So a good example is taxes. It's like, okay, now I have, you know, a couple $1,000s laying around all the time. And, you know, they're sitting right there in the account, like, you know, not different than any other dollars, but, you know.
But those are bookmarked. They have a purpose. And if they are spent, we will be in trouble. And having that discipline to keep everything separate definitely makes things a lot easier on the front end, or a lot harder on the front end, but a lot easier on the back end. And so, I highly recommend it.
Yep. The other thing that it can help with was, so up until, well, I mean, I guess I'm technically still doing things this way, but I'll fix that soon, is I have been paying myself based on a percentage of all the income that comes in. So basically, whenever I would get a check from Xometry or whatever, you know, a certain percent would go here, a certain percent would go there, here a percent, there a percent, everywhere a percent. And I am shifting from that to where I'm just going to pay myself a standard salary, where you know, once a week or once every other week, I'll write myself a check from this one account. It'll go into my personal account, and that way, for like my wife, it'll just be a much more predictable. Like, this is my budget. Instead of 1 week, it's like, you know, 1 week we'll have like $100 grocery budget, and then I'll have like 3 jobs come back paid from Xometry, and it'll be like, you know, this week we have a $600 grocery budget.
Yep.
And I think this will just kind of help even all that stuff out a little bit.
Yeah.
So
predictability and such.
Did we ever explain what Profit First is?
We've gone over it some, but it's been a minute, so it's probably good to go over it again.
60 episodes ago.
Yeah. Do you want to give a shot at it?
First, Harris. I was going to make you do it.
Okay, I'll do it.
Give the textbook answer, and then I set mine up, I think, just tweaked slightly differently, and then I'll explain why mine's different and how it's different.
So the idea behind Profit First is that you take your business and you divide it out into all the different revenue streams that are important to make a business function. And the minimum that is recommended is, I believe, 5 accounts. If I'm remembering this correctly. The first account,
I think it's 6.
It might be 6. We have 5, I think.
JK, you're right. Nope, okay. You're right. I Googled it.
Okay. So the 5 accounts, which are the ones that we have set up, your first account is your income, and that is where every dollar that you make is deposited into that account. And then the 4 other accounts are going to be set up as a percentage that is going to add up to 100. and you're going to divide that money out, and you have to do it on a routine. We do it once a week on Wednesday, but it's recommended that once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, however you want to do it. You're going to take all the money that's in the income account and you're going to divide it into the other accounts. Two of those accounts, you want to have them as a savings account that you can't pull money out of regularly. Those two accounts are going to be your taxes account and your profit account. You want to have them to where it's really easy to put the money in, but really hard to draw that money out. If you have enough discipline, I guess you could do a checking. I think ours are technically checking, but you need to try to make that money as hard to access as possible. And you're going to take a percentage of your income or of that income, and you're going to put it into those two accounts. The other two accounts are what your company is going to run off of. And that's going to be your owner's pay and your OPEX. And that's where the bulk of your money is going to be going, is going to be those two accounts. And in the beginning, your owner's pay is going to be relatively high and your OPEX is going to be relatively low, especially if you don't have any employees. But as your company grows, your owner's account is going to shrink and your OPEX account is going to grow.
In proportion, not in dollar value.
Yeah, in proportion, as a percentage. And your owner's pay should always be growing as your business grows, as a total like dollar value amount, but as a percentage, it'll be shrinking over time as it takes more capital to run your business. Now, every business, like, they give you rough percentages to start out with, and you can break it up into as many accounts as you want. But those are the basic ones that they recommend you start with. And then you can tailor it to your industry. So, for example, if you were a lawn mowing business and you did lawns, maybe you would have an OPEX accounts, and maybe you would have a gas accounts or like a utilities accounts where you'd put all your money in and you'd say, okay, this is the percentage of the business that's going to pay for fuel and service of the vehicle. So, like, if you're gas for your vehicles, maintenance for your vehicles, new blades, whatever. If you know that for every dollar of work I do, it takes 10 cents to upkeep my stuff, you set that up as a percentage, and then that money is only allocated towards that task in your business. And basically what that does is it forces you to bucket your resources into buckets, and then you work out of those buckets only with the cash that's in them. And so it kind of forces scarcity, but it allows the freedom to know that if one bucket's running low, it's not affecting all the other buckets. And you can focus on that one bucket. And so it could be that your percentages are off. It could be like for example, in our business, if OPEX is getting low, it's one of two things. One, we're not getting enough business, or two, we're not charging enough for our work. If we're really busy, but OPEX is still going down, then that means that our rates are not lining up with what they need to be. And it means we're either not efficient enough or we're not charging enough. And so rather than just looking at that and going, we need more work, if we're already busy and the OPEX bucket is still draining faster than we can fill it, then it might not necessarily be that we need more work. It's that we need to be either more efficient or charge more. And so it forces a little bit different perspective. And it's really helped us in our business to identify when there's a problem. So anyways, what about you? How are you implementing Profit First? I've given the basics.
Now, so a lot of the fundamentals aren't that different. I'm not using an income account. I'm just dumping all new income into my OPEX account. As you were explaining about it, I realized that, okay, if I get busier and if I start getting like more checks in a week, that could actually become a major hassle. Mm-hmm. But I have going back years, like I've always just, whenever I've gotten income, divided it up into my different budget categories. Mm-hmm. Because even like my personal account, I have probably 6 different checking accounts that all get used for different things. Mm-hmm. So like I'm used to just divvying up money when it comes in. But so I have the OPEX account, which is going to be used as you would expect. I then have my profit account. I have a taxes account, and I have an account that I'm calling payroll. But considering it's just me, and it'll probably, like, currently my plan is for it to only just be me. It'll be my money. And again, that's where I'm going to hopefully be filling that account faster than I'm draining it. And so I'm going to pay myself on an automatic transfer X dollars a month. Probably, I mean, honestly, I can live off of $800 a month right now, no problem. Or excuse me, $800 a week. $800 a week right now, no problem. So I'll probably just like start it there and then adjust up or down as the that bucket begins to overflow with. And then lastly, I have a capital investments account. And so that will be basically new machine or like new metrology equipment, anything that is more than a incidental little piece of material or whatever. I do not have my ratios figured out yet. That is something that I still need to work on. But
what about taxes?
Exist. I said taxes.
Oh, you did? I must have missed that.
Yeah.
And the last thing I mentioned, do you have a profit account?
I do have a profit account, yes.
Okay. The last thing I forgot to mention is that with that profit account, according to the profit first mentality, they recommend that once a quarter, you take half of that money and divide it out in the company. You being a solopreneur, that means that every 3 months you're going to take half that money and you're going to give it to yourself as a bonus. For me and Weston, we take half the account, split it in half again, so we each get a quarter of what's in that account, and we take that as a bonus. That was last week for us. It was nice. And what that does is that gives you something to look forward to every 3 months, and it gives you a goal. And it also lets you, it's also kind of an indicator of how the business is doing because it's a percentage of total revenue. So to give a little bit more background on how this profit first idea got started was most businesses, the guy who developed this was Mike Michalowicz. Well, I don't know if he developed it, but he's the one that wrote the book on it. And he was trying to make sure that all businesses profit was guaranteed. And because, I'm sure I've worked at companies that are like this, where they say that they're going to give a bonus out at the end of the year. And then at the end of the year comes, they're like, oh, we don't have enough money for bonuses, so no bonuses. And so it wasn't just that, but that's kind of some of the stuff that he wanted to fix. And so the way most businesses run, they do revenue minus expenses equals profit. And what he did is he said revenue minus profit equals expenses. He just rearranged the equation. All the same variables are there, with the idea that you take out your profit first and then you live off the rest. And so if any of you have ever heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, for those of you who know who he is, it's a very similar idea to what he says in Personal, where you pay yourself first and then you figure out how to live off the rest. Very similar idea in a personal life as Robert Kiyosaki, just kind of applied to businesses. And so it's a very interesting idea, and it can put a strain on things. But what I find is it usually puts a strain on, because you're bucketing everything, it'll put a strain in one area and it'll help you focus on that area rather than putting a strain on I might look at my accounts. I might have, we'll just throw a random number out here. I might have 20 grand across all my accounts, but my my OpEx account might be sitting down at 3 or 4 grand or 2 grand. And, and I got bills coming up, and it's like, okay, we got a problem. This account is dry and I don't got enough money to cover it. So what's going on? And so it raises the red flag. Even though I got, 20 grand across all accounts, that one bucket, if I only got 3 grand in it and I got, 8 grand in bills, there's a problem. There's a mismatch. And so I got to figure out what's going on in my business. Is my percentages off? Or, like I said earlier, there's lots of other issues that could be occurring at the same time. So
I have a few questions for you.
Go for it.
About how you do it. So first of all, one of the things, this is another reason why I wanted to build this account, is because I want to build up some cash as an emergency fund for the business, separate from my own personal emergency fund. Where do you put your emergency fund money? Does it go in one of the accounts? Do you just
create a new account?
All of the accounts grow?
You create a new account.
Okay. Is that what you do, or?
So what we try to do is we try to make sure that the total aggregate of the account grows. So we want to have more money left over as time goes on. We want that account to grow. And what we usually do is we'll take that money, for example, in OpEx. If the account grows too large, that's when we start looking at new equipment, new tools, whatever. So OpEx is always running basically at the bottom of the barrel, and that's just how we've been operating it. We have talked about putting in another account for big capital expenses, but we haven't done that yet. Our OpEx accounts varies too greatly right now that we're still trying to control the cash flow in that account and get that dialed into where it's more reasonable, and then we're going to open up another account and let it kind of go.
Okay.
So
basically, you're just kind of like, if your bank account is a bucket, and there's a hole in the side of your bucket, you're just raising where the hole is in the side of your bucket.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. I don't know if that might be the way I do it. Next question for you. Okay, so machine payments. If you were me, and with my structure, since I have that capital investments bucket, would you take the machine payment out of that one, or would you leave it in OpEx?
I leave it in OpEx.
Leave it in OpEx? Okay.
So everything that is a business expense that is not an improvement needs to come out of OpEx. So that's going to be your electrical, that's going to be your machine payments, that's going to be your employees, that's going to be your material, that's going to be your tooling. Those are all operating expenses. That's what you need your business to function. If everything is going full bore and you're just running, all of your expenses that you would occur on a normal reoccurring monthly basis, that is your operating expenses. Anything beyond that, that's extra, that's outside of OpEx. Now, we've got those two in the same bucket right now. And that's purely because we're trying to control the flow into that bucket. We haven't figured out, because our business has been going like this, we have busy and we have dry, we have not found a way to maintain that cash flow into that bucket to where it stays at a constant level. And so part of that is a new shop, new machine, new rates. And so at the old shop, we had it pretty well dialed in. But we've had so many changes here recently that and we're watching that OpEx bucket. It's going through wide swings right now. And we're trying to get it kind of calm back down to more manageable swings before we move on to adding more things. That makes sense.
Is it swinging because you are changing the allocations, or is it swinging just because, like, one month you spend $1,000 on stock and the next month you don't?
So it's a couple different things. So I'll say it this way: we had a week, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, where I had bid a bunch of work, and it came out to roughly $2,500, and it took us a full week to get that done. And then on a single Sunday, we got about $2,800 worth of work done on one day, because we came in and we did some work and we got it all done in one day. And so right now I'm having a problem with my quoting process, where my quoting times are not matching up with my machining times. New machine,
Okay.
I'm estimating things way too low on some jobs, and then on other jobs I'm spot on, and I'm making, I made more money in one day than I did in a whole week, and it was a lot easier. And so right now that's one fluctuation. The other fluctuation is, we've got a new machine payment, which is, close to $3,000 on that machine. And that comes out once a month. And so we've got to figure out what's a normal level that we need to go to make sure that we can absorb that without having any problems. We haven't had any problems, but these are all things that were, our monthly expenses have increased by about 60 to 70% of what they were at the old shop. And that's a combination of the volume of the business that we're doing, a combination of new monthly expenses that we didn't have in the old shop. And so right now that OpEx bucket, we got our eyes laser focused on it because it is going crazy. and we got to figure out what do we need to adjust. We went over our quoting sheet here recently, and I think we increased pricing by anywhere from 20 to 30%. And the parts we were producing and quoting were, 20 to 30% cheaper than what they had been previously. And so that brings up the question. I mean, it's really good for my customer, but my machine is a lot more expensive. So do I need to increase my rates even higher? Because I don't want to be giving away the parts for free relative to the cost of the machine, because I just spent a big capital investment in a new machine. But I would like to see my customers see some price break. But what's a reasonable price break? Because I'm taking on a lot more risk, but I also want to produce a better quality product at a cheaper rate in a faster time. But I still got to make payments on that machine, and so getting all of those equations balanced is the bucket is kind of the best visualization of how I'm doing on that. It's kind of the ultimate tell on, am I doing everything right? And as those levels start to even out or fluctuate in smooth patterns, then I know I'm doing things right. And it takes a while. The thing with Profit First is it takes 3 months to 6 months to start seeing those trends and those patterns and start to understand what is a healthy, like you said, you don't know what your percentages are. You don't know what a healthy amount in each bucket is. I will tell you that your profit and your taxes account, those kind of live off in la la land, because you're not supposed to focus on them. It's really your owner's pay and your OPEX account, or however many sub buckets you want to have, that you need to be paying attention to. Now, one thing that we haven't done that we probably should do is we should probably take that OPEX bucket out, and we should probably split it, and we should have what percentage of our revenue needs to go to pay for machine payments, electrical, utilities, and I need to know what percentage of the business is going to that, and I need to separate those. And then my material, my tooling, all those things that kind of fluctuate with the jobs need to be in a separate bucket. That's something we haven't done yet, but that's something that probably needs to happen, because then I can I can figure out what percentage of this does it need to go to month to pay for expenses that aren't going to change. My electric bill isn't going to change by crazy amounts. I mean, it might, but
Mine does.
it might be $100 more, or $100 less, or $200 more, but it's probably not going to jump by $2,000.
Yeah.
And so I can tell with relative certainty that that's going to be. I know what my machine payments are going to be, and so if I can figure out what percentage of my business needs to go to those payments, I can try to set that. Now, as we grow and get more revenue, you might need to adjust those percentages, but I can get something dialed in where, okay, I know my machine's paid for every month. I know my electric's paid for every month. I know that money's spoken for. So now I can focus on the stuff that's moving a little bit crazier. And so
Would you make a new account for your variable costs and a separate one for your fixed costs? Or
probably.
Okay.
That's something that we haven't done, but I would like to do, just to kind of separate those two things, because that takes those out of the equation. That, the more you can subdivide it out to where you can focus on the things that are actually, going all over the place, the easier it is to see where the problems are. And so,
Yeah.
because if you think about it, you could run and what most businesses do is they run it all off of one big bucket. They've got one big cash bucket, everything's in that bucket. And yes, that does slow the ebb and the flow, because your taxes are in there, your owner's pays in there, like everything is in that one bucket. As you subdivide things out, things naturally become more rocky in individual buckets. But it's the waves in those buckets that tell you what's going on. They tell you a story.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So,
Do you have a spreadsheet or something where you track the levels in your buckets over time?
yes.
Okay.
So we have an Excel
Is it
sheet.
just okay.
So we have an Excel sheet, and this is where we do once a week we balance out, and that's where we take that income and we split it out into all the different buckets. And so we have an Excel sheet where we track all that. And so every week we fill it out, we go through it, and we can see how each different bucket is doing. So, and we just kind of do a weekly report. I have an email record of it every week, and I can see. And what also we get in that report is we divide everything out into our buckets, And then the two things that I see is I see my net 30 bills that are coming up and my net 30 revenue that's coming up. And so I can compare those two and look at my percentages, and I can go, okay, I have this much in my account, I have this much revenue coming in, and I know this percentage of my revenue is going to go towards this percentage of bills. And I can look in advance and go, okay, we'll use round numbers. If I got 20 grand coming in and I've got 10 grand of expenses, what's my percentages on my buckets? And is that going to, am I going to have 10 grand that's going to come out of my revenue? And is that going to go to OPEX? Or, if my percentages were off, maybe I only have, 8 grand of that. Maybe I have my owner's pay really high or my profit account really high for some dumb reason, higher than it should be. Because, I want to make money. I want to make really good money. Well, then I'm not going to have enough money to cover my expenses. And so I can also kind of predict out 30 days what those accounts are going to look like.
Okay. Do you have any sort of accounting software, or is this all just spreadsheet?
QuickBooks.
So I haven't used, well, I've used QuickBooks Manufacturing for their like kind of more ERP side, but like for my own business, like I'm right now just managed on spreadsheets. Can you link QuickBooks with your bank accounts and see all of this stuff? Like, can you generate reports on this? Or
yes, Weston does more of the QuickBooks stuff than I do, so I'd have to pick his brain. But let me look up one of these reports just for a second. I know we get a report on all the net 30 incoming and all the net 30 bills that are coming. So I know that's in QuickBooks, and I know that we get that every week.
Can you like do bank transfers from QuickBooks, or do you still have to log into your?
I think you can do bank transfers from QuickBooks if I remember correctly. But yeah, so I get a report on all of the upcoming bills and all the upcoming net 30 invoices. And I can look at those based off my percentages and know if I'm doing well or not. And then I can also look at my OPEX account as it changes over time. So I kind of got those 3 different things that I can see at a glance and know how we're doing.
So okay, so for mine, I haven't figured out my percentages yet. I've been re-listening to the Profit First book, and I haven't gotten that far in the book yet. But okay, so the taxes account, the percentage there is just some simple math. Like that shouldn't take me long to figure out. That's basically not a decision I have to make. That is just the numbers will number and give me the right number. Mm-hmm. Same thing with payroll. That's not really a decision I have to make other than how much money I want to make, which, like I said, I'll probably start off with $800 a week, which should be plenty for me and my family. So that basically leaves OPEX, capital investment, and profit as the accounts where I need to choose a percentage to go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you start? Would you calculate what your historical OPEX expenses are and then just kind of use whatever is left on the other two? Or
so the way we did it is we did 2 things. First, we figured out what is our goal, and then we figured out what is our trending average. And so the way we did it is we picked a middle point in between those 2 points and set our percentages based off that. So if we're only hitting our average, we're going to be sinking. But if we're hitting our goal, we're going to be growing. And if we're somewhere in the middle, we're going to be stationary. And so that's how we've set it up. And so if we're not growing, we're sinking. And that just, if we're growing, if we're hitting our goals, we're growing. And we've kind of backtracked it from there.
But like, okay, so I know historically, and by historically, I mean in the last 3 months, my operating expenses are 35% of my gross. Would you put 35% as that number? Or would you give it a little bit of margin? Or
so is that 35% a average?
Yes.
Okay. And have you seen it been trending up? Like, have you seen your average been trending up?
My
Like
trend is that the average percentage is going down. So
oh,
as I go, I am getting more efficient.
okay, then I would probably leave it at 35%, knowing that as I grow and get more efficient, there's going to eventually be leftover money in that bucket. And when you have a healthy savings in that bucket is when you start changing out your percentage. So for example, you say you start off at 35% today, and over time that bucket grows because you're not taking out all of that money, and hopefully your revenue grows, so a greater percentage is going, or the same percentage but a greater amount is going into that bucket. When that bucket gets to the point where it's 2 to 6 months of excess cash, you start ticking those percentages down
Mm-hmm.
until it starts leveling it out, and then you try to maintain 2 to 6 months of cash in that account for what its average use is. And if it goes above that, then your percentages are off on the high side. If it starts to dip below that, you need to bump them back up.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so then it basically just comes between deciding on how much goes to capital investment versus profit.
Mm-hmm. So we started out with a profit of like 1 to 2%, and we're trying to grow that as we fix. So in the beginning, everything's turmoil, and so I want to reduce as much financial burden. So I'm going to put as much as I can into that OPEX bucket and only survive off the minimum. And then once that bucket starts filling up and getting to, and I start understanding the flow, if it starts filling up too fast, then I can go, okay, I can shift that over. And let's say I shift that over to owner's pay, and let's just say, I go from taking $800 a week to $900 a week. But after that, I'm pretty comfortable. Well, then I start putting some of that money into profit and maybe some of that money into, future machines or something, future. And so, you're these percentages are not locked in place, but I don't recommend changing them like every week. I recommend re-looking at them every 3 to 6 months. So pick a number, stick with it for 3 months, and reevaluate it. If you think everything's still going good, go to it for another 3 months and then reevaluate it. Right now we're adjusting it, I think, once per year. We're reevaluating it every 3 months, but we're trying to stick for it for a year, and because that tells us the full picture. Now, don't be afraid to change it in the middle if you have to. I mean, if the ship's going down and your percentages are off, change it, please.
Yeah.
But try to stick out those percentages as long as possible, because the more you can hold them, that it'll tell you if you're on the right track or not.
Makes sense to me.
So that's been our experiences thus far, and yeah. So
I
you
think at this
will
point, I
run.
basically just need to sit down and do some math. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I know about how much I pay in taxes, but like, what does that work out to as a percentage? I don't know. What does my payroll
yeah.
work out to as a percentage? I don't know.
And what I would do is, once you've got your percentages figured out, figure out what your average would be and make sure it's the bottom dollar of what you can survive on. So say $800 a month is what you can survive on comfortably, but let's say you could drop down to $600 or $500. Make sure that if you're running, 20% below your average or something like that, that's when you hit that value. And then okay, if I can survive off of $500 a week, then I'm gonna set and say my average is here. Take 20% down, figure out what percentage of that revenue would equal $500 a week, and know that that's a pretty healthy starting amount. Like, you don't want to go below that percentage, but you don't necessarily want to go way above that percentage either. That's going to be a pretty good number. You might want to bump it up a little bit, but that'll give you at least a reasonable number to know that it should be around or a little bit above.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay, then I guess going back to capital investment, I mean, this is basically like it's in the normal business world, there's really not much of a difference between like profit and capital investment. Like, a lot of the times what's the term he uses? You plow back profit into investment. Like it's not, I don't know. It's basically just a choice. Like there's not a forcing function a lot of times on that. So how would you go about deciding, what percentage of whatever leftover money you want to go into capital investments versus going into profits?
So profits, I usually I want to figure out a percentage where I know it's going to be a useful amount, but it's not going to disrupt my business.
Okay.
And I pick that value and I set it. For right now, I think we're at 5% is what we're running at. We started off at I think 2% or 3% or 1%, somewhere in that range. Somewhere in that 1 to 3% range, but we're up to 5% now.
And you take it quarterly?
And we take it quarterly. So we take it. We just took our first one last week
of 2023 or 2024.
Yeah, of 2024.
Yeah,
last week. And so we have on our Excel sheet the week of profits. We have it highlighted, so we know that that's the next time we get paid out of our profits account.
So if I did 5%, that'd be approximately $1,200 a quarter.
Yeah, or whatever your percentage,
which is enough to be interesting. Like it's not like, woo, I got to go buy a burrito. It's like, this is a useful amount of money.
Yeah. And it's something that you can splurge with your family. You can do something with that as a reward for sticking with everything. So, and then one thing that we do is we set our taxes account to where we're going to have excess at the end of the year. And whatever's left over at the end of the year, we can choose at that point, depending on how the business is doing, to either take that as profit, to put that into new equipment, to put that into new something, or to help balance out some of the accounts if they're running a little low. Like we can take that money and it's basically any excess cash. Now, right now we still haven't got our taxes back, so our tax account is still growing. So you need to look back at like the end of the fiscal year, that money that that's in there, and separate it from this year. So, we have to have at the end of last year at this date, we have this much money in the account. When taxes is done, we're going to take that much money out. We're going to take a percent. We're going to pay off all of our taxes, and then whatever's left over, we're going to figure out how we want to divvy it up into different accounts, or if we want to take it as some profit. What makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of if how that changes with like quarterlies, because you should know pretty accurately like throughout the year if you're doing the quarterly estimates. Like,
yes, the thing that I don't know is and we've gone off our tax advisor for what he estimates, and his estimates don't always line up with the percentages. And so, and some of that is also we don't know because we also are deducting the machine payments or whatever you call it. The what is that when your equipment degrades?
Depreciation.
Yes. And so I don't know how all that affects everything versus our revenue. So like we are paying taxes monthly, like for like our online sales, because you have to do that.
Oh, sales tax?
Yeah, that stuff.
Okay.
But
do you get enough? You get enough sales where you have to pay sales tax
online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it like $250K?
It depends on.
Oh, this is a state per state thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It matters per state too, which is fun.
Yeah, and Arkansas has really high sales tax.
Okay. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it sucks. That's my biggest complaint. If we were in Oklahoma or in Texas, it'd be like nothing. But we got a few nasty grams in the beginning because we didn't know we were supposed to pay
from the IRS or the
I don't remember Arkansas who it was from, but it was whatever it was. Basically, they're like, you need to make sure you're paying your sales taxes, and we're like, oh, oops. So, but anyways,
I know Shopify did it for you. There was a plugin.
Yeah.
So I just didn't do it, and it did, and it was fine.
So
But I think
for online sales, I think it's okay. And I think the only reason they came after us was because we got our FFL, and if you do any gun sales or anything like that, I think that was the main thing. But I don't
how
remember.
many online sales are you doing?
Not much. We did a lot in the beginning, but we're not doing much anymore.
Okay,
Honestly,
I was
our
about to say
online
because
sales have about died down to about nothing. So like I don't even know if we're really paying anything monthly right now because it's such a small percentage of our business. But in the beginning, it was probably 20%, 10%. It was a
yeah,
substantial enough amount that it was noticeable. So, and I'd love to get another product going of some kind. Like that's always been my goal is to get out of the job. Like I don't want to get out of the job shop space. Let me rephrase that. I would love to have a sustainable cash flow to maintain our average without having to rely on the job shop stuff, which is ebbs and flows way too much. So,
I was about to yell at you to focus, but also my goal is like I'm gonna keep revising these numbers over time. I think right now my goal for short term is like 30% Xometry, 30% non-Xometry job shop work, and then like I've lost track, but like 20% products and 20% YouTube. I think would be ideal.
yeah.
That may be a high percentage for YouTube. I don't think it'll ever be that much, but
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean like you have to diversify your revenue streams to a certain extent just to make sure that if any one stream starts to die down, you're not hosed. So,
also you need to focus.
but also you need to focus.
So
You
good
can
luck
you can
balancing that.
you can focus. I think you can focus each stream. The problem is if each stream is a wide fan of mess.
That's true. Yeah, you can have a niche with inside each revenue stream. I guess that's a good way of narrowing it down and thinking about it.
Yeah. Because like I do agree that you need to focus, but like that might be in the job shop space, we only accept these types of works. And in the product space, we only make this type of product. And on the YouTube space, we only make these types of videos. Like you can
Yeah.
focus in on each one, but you can still do them all. So, and that's kind of what we're figuring out. You know, I've been talking to my customer some, my big customer, and you know, I don't want all the work that they send out. I mean, I would love it, but I want them to go look at a part and go, that's a precision ingenuity part. You know,
Yeah.
that's when I've been doing my job right. As is that when people look at their parts, they go, man, that's a part we need to send over there to Harrison and those guys. If people can look at their parts and think that thought, then I'm doing something right. And
Speaking of doing things right, I think I'm going to move into administrative details, which I will
okay,
probably almost certainly screw up here. But we have a Patreon for everybody listening. Patreon.com/taps and patience, or there is like a 50-50 chance of there being a link in the podcast description down below. The Patreons get early access to all of our recordings, and for good measure, they also get early access to all the Audacity Micro stuff. All of the profits from Patreon are going to go to getting Harrison and I to IMTS. And so we're really appreciative of the people who have decided to do that. It's by no means necessary. This will always be a free podcast, but we do like the people who support us on Patreon better. People like Chris Zajic, who did not correct me on my pronunciation last time, and he probably should have, and EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Simon, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and Jake Brownson. Those people all supported at the $10 a month tier where they get their name read, sometimes correctly, sometimes not. And we also have a few members at the $4 tier or the Buck a Show tier. All people get access to all of the rewards except for the people who get their name read. Well, yeah, see, I told you I would butcher this. There are different tiers that do get different rewards. There are higher tiers than $10 tiers with some very special rewards. But at $4, you still get access to all the early access and everything. So we appreciate those people just as much as the $10 people. If you are a small business and you would like a shout out on our podcast, shoot me a message and I will give you a shout out on the podcast. All ships rise to the tide, and we think it's the right thing to do. Did I get everything?
I
feel
think
like there's
did.
something else. Oh, coins! So, okay. Harrison has been trying to announce this for like months, and I've been trying to not announce it for months. We are going to do a coin for all new Patreon members. Let's say between now and the end of April. You think that's too soon? End of April?
Probably it's a little too soon, but we need to make sure we get everyone who's already signed up.
Yeah, okay. And everybody who's already signed up is also going to get a coin. So if you back us at any level, should we say the 11th of March, April, May? The 11th of May? That's a month?
Sure.
Okay. If you sign up before the 11th of May, you will get a custom challenge coin for the Taps and Patience podcast. That artwork is currently being worked on by Adam C., who is an excellent graphic designer. Unlike everything else in the podcast, that is not being handled by an AI. That is being handled by an actual artist. And he does some really excellent work. He's done some stickers for me. He's done some stickers for Sticker of the Month Club. He is a fantastic illustrator. So we will share that artwork when it is ready. I think he is currently hunched over it, scrawling frantically on his iPad. But as soon as it's ready, we will show that off. They are going to be awesome. They'll be solid stainless steel coins made by Harrison. So if you want one of those coins, either already be a Patreon or sign up to the Patreon and you can have a coin. They're going to be super cool. And I will make fun of you at IMTS if you don't have a coin. So I'll make fun of the other 600,000 people there, and that's a big number. The other 60,000 people there. But if you have a coin, I won't make fun of you.
There you go. Cool. I still want to figure out something we can do for the higher tiers rewards.
They have good rewards for the higher tiers.
What, their name shout out?
I mean, there's 2 tiers above the name shout out.
Oh, okay. What are those? I guess I haven't looked at
I feel like they should be a surprise, and you have to go to the Patreon to find out.
Oh, okay, that's fair. I'm going to go look at my own Patreon.
You've probably never even looked. I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. One of them has to do with the awkward goodbye.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think anyone's going to ever back beneath the higher tiers, but if you do... Anyway, I accidentally deleted our outro music, so...
So you're going to go with the same intro music? Oh my goodness. All right, guys, we've reached that time in the podcast where we've rambled on long enough that we've decided that we've run out of things to talk about. So now we're going to do our awkward outro where I go through and say that we appreciate having you here and that you guys are our favorites.
Especially the $10 Patreons.
Yeah. And so, anyways, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. This is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. And because I do everything in the wrong order...
I thought you were done.
Because I do everything in the wrong order, make sure to like, subscribe, share, tell everyone, all that fun stuff. Now you can do it.